Welcome, everybody, here to KC Happy Hour, episode number 69. We are live from the studio with a new guest, a returning guest, another couple new guests here tonight. We'll have a few drivers joining us at the end of the show, and I think a similar format that we'll do that we started last week with kind of this return back to prepping for 2023, where we'll start introducing more and more of the stars that we'll see either coming up into the senior ranks or returning back for senior for shifter stuff, so you can get an idea of who to root for as we look towards the SCUSA Winter Series in January. Jason Berry returns to the show. Mr. NorCal Karters here to help me break down a little bit of some of the news that's gone on over the week. Jason, thanks for coming again, bud.
Thanks for inviting me on.
Yeah, man.
I made it to the big leagues. My mom will be happy.
You say that. You've been on here before. This isn't new.
Yeah, but then you sent me back down to the minors.
You're right. Well, not everyone can stay. But in all seriousness, Jason will help me go through. We had, there's a lot of developments at this part of the year. There's also still a lot of unknowns at this part of the year going into 2023. Everyone's kind of come down off the high of Supernats 25. So now we start getting into the nitty gritty of what 2023 looks like. We've covered a lot of stuff throughout the year. Let's go over what did happen last weekend. And Aaron, in the background, can help me pull a lot of these graphics up that we tried to have a little bit. So the Machismo 12-hour, the final race ever at CalSpeed Karting. A little bit of a bittersweet note there, obviously, but this major event went on actually a week delayed with the wet weather. That's a big hindrance for the rental carts here. Jason, as Mr. NorCal, it's not exactly your backyard, but it is not far away and not nearly as far away as mine. This event's been a mainstay in California karting for quite a while, along with the whole racetrack show. Bittersweet, I have to imagine, for everybody that was able to make it down there for this one for sure.
Yeah, and it's such a unique event that they've been putting on there for years with the endurance style racing. It just really touches probably, customers that a normal race team or a kart shop's not going to reach out and touch. And it's one of those events I've always heard about it for years. It was huge down there at CalSpeed, and I'm pretty sure that's going to be missed. I imagine they are going to try to do something to replicate it at some of the other tracks in the area.
That's what you'd think, right? Like over looking at K1 circuit, there's still a lot of unknown from everyone of what that'll look like. All that's been confirmed so far over at K1 is that, the SCUSA California Pro Kart Challenge is going to be there. The SCUSA Pro Tour is going there. So there will be racing there. There's going to be paddock space. The track is still, well on par for all of those dates. Then you look at, like the Tri-C Kart Club, as well as, I'm trying to remember, I think there was one more that was set to go over there as well. But there's going to be a lot of racing at that racetrack. What the hybrid of where the rental kart, owner kart racing looks like, and any kind of endurance events. There's really, as I was looking through, I wanted to give everybody a little bit of a history lesson, first and foremost, on kind of what endurance karting's looked like in the States over the last few years. So we go back and I wanted to go over this a little bit. This may seem a little repetitive for our longtime karters that tune into the show, but this is an industry show that also has a lot of new faces, a lot of people that maybe haven't been in the sport for all too long, right? We lose the Machismo 12-hour, at least with the way it is at CalSpeed after this weekend. It always fell at a good time of the year when everybody wasn't doing too much racing. So you had, Christian Brooks and Matt Johnson and Blake Nash on a Nash Motorsports team. Race Liberante and Chase Jones with the MPG Race Factory outfit were there. And then, like Jason said, it's a lot of people that maybe you don't see on either the major shows or even club guys. The heavy amount of rental carts there. There was also a 12-hour event that went overnight over the weekend at Orlando Kart Center that was run as well. That was also kind of a hybrid of the rental carts, and then in their case, they ran the Tillotson, I think 225 package down at that club. So rental karting events and rental kart endurance events aren't anything new. Pro kart endurance events aren't anything new, but they are maybe a little bit less seen around. So let's, again, go back a little bit. One of the most well-known in the modern era was the Robopong 200 back in 2000. This picture from 2012, this kicked off as kind of the mainstay race from Newcastle Motorsports Park. It was with tag karts, which, again, if we think back to that 2000s era, the American, pioneered tag class of taking all these different European engines and letting the clubman be able to pick whatever one was the cheapest for him or best fit for him, weight-wise or what have you. Race made that really, really popular. The tag class was popular. 206 didn't exist back then, and it was still at a lower price point and probably lower competition level engine wise to compared to say where the X30 stuff is now. The Rotaxes were in that. You could see that with one of the Aero card on the outside. That event lasted for a long, long time up until the mid 2010s at Newcastle Motorsports Park, and it was not an event that necessarily needed a ton of modern day advertising, which is what's been the case for a lot of these events now to go on, because you're going into a market that's kind of sits dormant for a lot of the year and is really unknown of how to reach. And so the RoboPong 200 went away. In replace of that, realizing that they had such a massive 206 club turnout, they didn't want to desecrate the name. They felt like the RoboPong 200 had kind of its own lore, especially with higher horsepower pro level racing. You had NASCAR, IndyCar teams all the time. IndyCar guys would come out because it was after their season was done in the fall. So they did a 206 race. Went over decent, had a pretty decent turnout for 125 laps compared to the 200 of the RoboPong 200 that was a 4-hour show, but it also didn't stay. Then you kind of move on from that pro level to RoboPong 200 to more of the semi-pro races like this one. And that's what I would classify the Machismo race in, because it has a mix of amateurs. It has a mix of some big name guys that would come back and run it, but it's run on a lower horsepower format. And in the Machismo case, you have that hybrid of owner carts and rental carts. The only other event that's even similar that happened this year was the SimCraft 24 Hours of Orlando. This was the third annual event in this one, and I talked with TJ Halsma extensively today, a little bit over texting back and forth to kind of get an idea of where his head was at. Because to me, in the modern age of the last 5 years, he was a big pioneer of bringing back a lot of endurance karting, similar to how RoboPong was, and realizing that the 206 package could run long enough. Would be inexpensive enough where the motors weren't completely toast after the race, that it could be taken off. And in the first year, I mean, he was absolutely relentless. Every single day was active on social media and reaching out to everyone that he could. And it started at Orlando for 2 years, went to NOLA this year. And then in the wake of a lot of delays that were kind of the aftermath of getting back to racing from the COVID-19 pandemic, the event was delayed so long that a lot of teams dropped out. And so it made it a super, super unfortunate financial situation for him and for the track and for everybody involved, because all of a sudden you have these lighter deposits for entries coming in 6 months out, because it takes so long to build up a team of 4. You think one cart is not just one guy, it's an entire operation of mechanics to help, or at least buddies to help, and multiple drivers. And so, unfortunately, while the plans were kind of hopefully to get maybe some more outside sponsorship and funding and try to keep doing this event, as well as to keep going into maybe a 6 and a 12-hour and a 12-hour, series in the future that would culminate in this annual 24-hour, that's all kind of to the wayside. And again, he went, I think, about as hard as anybody could have on the marketing side from it. So where does that leave us with the Machismo going away, and what does endurance racing in the States look like? Well, there's still options. On the amateur racing side, there's something called endurance karting that's been around since 2001. That's this kind of traveling fleet of arrive and drive carts that it fits a little bit closer to the niche that I feel like endurance karting falls into, and that being somewhat of kind of like a corporate outing as well as a race, because you have that market of a handful of people that like to travel and go to the enduro races. You can see in the front of that picture that we have right there a guy with a Pride race suit, which the Pride team, which has been one of our apparel partners in the past and currently as well, they brought 3 entries over to the Machismo 12 hours. So there's groups of people kind of hidden around, but it's all spread out and kind of hard to put a pulse on. And it's not as easy as a regional series or a national series putting an event at a track that already has a base club that you can go to, because again, for one entry, you need 4 guys. It costs more. So it's more people to bring together on a market that's, I wouldn't say not proven, but a lot harder to pull off. This series still is able to pull off pretty good events throughout the year. They've got nearly 15 or so events set for next year, including a 24-hour rental cart event. And like I said, at Orlando, that's a track that's probably going to continue to have a lot of local level endurance races, and they have been for quite some time. But from a national side and from a bigger kind of one-off marquee events, I don't know what exactly it looks like, but it's so tough to hit, Jason. Again, like you said, it just serves such a different crowd as a whole. and they're not all maybe as active on any platform or in communication with each other as what we would be. I would say the rest of the sprint or road or dirt karting communities are, that are just racing and driving against each other a whole lot more often. And it makes it, to me, it seem like a whole lot tougher to pull off the entries for an event if you're not just looking off an already existing local crowd, by filling them with rental carts.
Yeah, and to me, I kind of classify it as more of not to. Last year I started using the word gimmick with a lot of different karting things. Not saying that the endurance stuff is gimmicky, but it's a gimmick, right? It's to get somebody in a cart where you might get that average guy that kind of thinks he knows what a go-kart is. Like, hey, let's go do an endurance race. Let's go do this. Let's go do that. It's kind of like your indoor kart places. Everyone that walks in an indoor kart place doesn't go back the following week. Some do, some don't. And I would think with that endurance type racing, you probably have your 10 percenters that are hardcore. They're going to put the schedule together. They're going to, hey, this is our team. We're going to do it all year. Then you have the other guys that are like, probably more like myself. I would go, yeah, I tried it once. It was fun, but I'm going to go do something else. And I think there's a place for it in our sport because it allows the average guy to get in a cart that's better than a typical indoor cart, experience racing. And then who knows, maybe 10 or 15% of those guys go, oh, I want to hook up with one of these pro teams and actually compete at a local club.
And it's just like it's more expensive than a club, right? But then the atmosphere is more similar to a club race, right? Similar to, like, outside of the RoboPong 200, right? You look at the expenses run, from traveling and staying overnight in some cases, right?
Mm-hmm.
Having a practice day the day before, and then making sure the wear and tear on the equipment, the entry fees, all that ends up being more. So it's kind of like that's, maybe a one-off, and maybe you spend that kind of money, but then you either go, like you said, you either go more serious. And if you're going to spend more money, typically you want, maybe hire a different type of competition similar to the national stuff that we like to cover a lot. Or you just, maybe go to the club racing, but your budget's not going to want to sustain something like that for maybe more than once a year. And even once a year proved really, really tough, which unfortunately just ran it out. But where, and if that kind of hybrid of maybe higher expense, but lower stress, like you said, a little lower, intensity, is hard to find. So
yeah.
it's cool when they happen. I think everybody has a little soft spot in their heart, but who shows up pen to paper and money down?
Well, and when you mentioned the equipment, and I think it would be very important, like with the RoboPong, you used your own cart. You had your own stuff. Out here on the West Coast, we used to do a 4-hour endurance race at Sonoma, and a number of guys really enjoyed. That was kind of like their tradition. They get their buddies together that normally they're racing head to head against that guy. Now they're on the same team and they're racing. And there's been some great stories that came out of that event as well. But going back to the equipment, if you're bringing your own equipment, you can really set things up specifically for an endurance race. Versus if you're showing up to some of these other endurance races where it's almost like a rental cart, it's very important that the carts are very consistent to maintain longevity for your users, because they're going to want to come back if the equipment's consistent.
For sure. Now let's move out of that and stay on the West Coast, though, for all the news that's coming your way, right? We've talked about K1 circuit quite a bit. What else has been so far stirring up on your end?
Oh man, it's December. Like you just said, the seasons are wrapping up. We already have a number of series and a number of tracks in our area that have released their schedules for 2023. We have Rock Sonoma. Their schedule came out about a week and a half ago. And if you don't mind if I say it, they are going to be live streaming in 2023 on their channels. So I'm kind of tongue-tied on that one, because with what you're doing with your live stream, I hope other tracks and other promoters see it and go, it's making race karting more accessible to the average guy. Because now we're watching it on YouTube and Facebook. So hats off to you for, really pushing the envelope on the national level stuff. And I think it's a trickle down effect. Us little club guys, we get to have, our chance on YouTube and Facebook with the live streams. And the past year and a half, it's been a lot of fun just learning how to do it and working with the production team. So that's Rock Sonoma. Their schedule is out. Our NCK guys, their schedule is out for 2023. They're actually going to be hitting a new track called Chuckwalla. So that's on their schedule. I keep meaning to try to toggle, but I don't think I can on my end. But then we have Prairie City Karting. So big news out of Prairie City Karting. They're doing their 2-stroke and their 4-stroke series, 2 separate weekends. That's going on. And the owner of Prairie City Karting, Donald Durbin, is also taking on the task of forming another regional series. So he's talked with many of the promoters and many of the tracks in the areas to try to keep the big dates off of each other, because he has heard from a lot of the teams that, hey, if you run a good show, we will support you, but you can't put it on top of these other shows that have been our income for the past 3, 4, 5 years. So that's going to be pretty exciting. Let's see. That was 1, 2, 3. I think there's one more out there. Give me 1 second.
You're good. We'll keep going on there. While we pull up a little more of that, I wanted to also bring up here in our news segment, there was this week's little bit of firestorm, it seemed to be in the comment sections of anyone, was this announcement that came out from AKRA that Aaron, if you want to pull it up, we have from the Kart Lounge, Keith Champagne. I talked to him a little bit. There was 2 kind of 4-cycle things that I didn't touch on. One was the CKNA class updates for 2023 that had come out, but this one was a little bit different. And so there's a lot of, I think, honestly, just a lot of misunderstanding going on first on this post. Obviously, it's road racing, so that's where it affects the most. But there's 2 Tillotson motors that are out there. The Tillotsons that were used over at the Orlando Enduro that I've mentioned that are run at the Sunshine State Karting Challenge, the local tracks in Anderson Race Park in Tampa, at Orlando's club track that's run over at the Karting the Coast series. Those are all the Tillotson 225s, which are about a 12 horsepower kind of step above where the 206 equivalent is. This one being the 212. This is meant to be the kind of not so much competitor, but equivalent where it could run together, which is the way they were looking at it. It's been used over in the dirt side. They've started to kind of take a look at it on the AKRA series, which is, again, like NCK, another one of the many different road racing promoters. From their point of view and from Keith's ideas, again, they're an independent series. They don't have a crazy tight relationship with Briggs, not in a bad way, but they've got the leeway to kind of do what they want. And from their view, they didn't really have any massive numbers on the 206 side, whereas a lot of the sprint series had, or vice versa. It wasn't terrible where the class needed to be axed, but there was an option to put it in. The only pushback that seemed to be so far that has been ringing around, that from what I can tell, is just there's a little bit more engine builder kind of leeway room with the 212 that could end up making it, for the most part, a little bit quicker. It's not sealed on the bottom end, so it's very little part picking. It's a lot more back in the builder's hands, but not to a crazy degree. But because of that, it could make it just a little bit quicker. In road racing, though, from one of the comments that I thought was pretty good, I mean, that's a 9 horsepower motor on a car track. The end of the day, the drafting part will make the biggest difference. So unless you have 2 of those 212s hooked up and they're able to get away from everybody, for the most part, it doesn't really affect anything. So if anyone sees anything about that, first to understand that there's 2 of those Tillotson models that go around that look very, very similar. So when people say Tillotson, I think a lot get confused that there's a 12 horsepower engine out there that's being used a lot in the sprint side already in different pockets throughout the country. No one's really using the 212 yet, and no one's trying to run that with the 206 in any sprint racing yet. In a perfect world, you'd have kind of that regimented class structure from a third party, right? And you could have multiple manufacturers in it. It makes it simple. We don't have that. We probably won't ever have that in the States. We're a little bit too big. For a variety of different reasons, we probably won't have that. But I thought that was interesting there. And then the CKNA class structure as well, which was cool. But did you get to the last thing that you had on your news part there, Jason?
I did, and I don't even know how I forgot about Andy. So Challenge of Americas, their schedule is out. So Challenge Karting, we were even talking about Andy before that.
We were, yeah. Yeah. He's so this year fits out pretty well. It's like 2 to 3 week gaps after each of the Rock Winter Tours, right? So guys can go back and forth.
Yep, and then he's also doing, let's see here, in the middle of July 14th and 16th, he is doing a one-off special event up at Pat's Acres, which is in Canby, Oregon. So all of us old racers remember that track. And that's been pretty popular for him as a summer stop. And then we also have the Pro Kart Challenge, SCUSA Pro Kart Challenge. Their schedule is live as well. So and those are just the big ones, or the ones that have actually just sent me the schedules. So there's a lot of racing going on the West Coast. I'm actually really curious to see how the whole K1 track is going to go down south. Because it's LAKC and CalSpeed was such a huge part of SoCal racing. Hopefully these other teams are kind of looking around and say, hey, what are some other options? And of course, I'm going to plug NorCal Karters. NorCal is a great option if things kind of fall through. I hope they don't. But for these teams that have customers that want to go race, there's a lot of racing action here on the West Coast.
And so, yeah, for Donald looking to make the regional series up there as a non-West Coast guy, you'd have, I mean, this year there's no real pro kart dates that go fully into Northern California, you would say. And then for the KPX series, right, is that also kind of staying away from your region and the tracks that are up in your area, or is his to be a little more specifically just focused on NorCal? Like, do you have a lot of other regional dates that were there? What was, you think, part of the reason for wanting to get into that?
I think there was a demand for it because we were outside of Andy's series coming into Northern California with Challenge of the Americas and his California Rock Championship. There was kind of a void for regional racing. From my understanding, I haven't heard anything from KPX. From my understanding, Donald's series, it's going to be called the NorCal Sprint Kart Series. That's going to run in lieu of KPX for this year. It's going to be a 2-stroke and a 4-stroke format. But he's also looking at hitting the tracks. I'm going to call them on the outskirts. So in NorCal, we have 4 or 5 tracks within 2 hours of Sacramento, 2.5 hours within the Bay Area. So we have a high density. Those tracks always get a lot of attention. But then we have Buttonwillow down in Central California. We have Santa Maria. We have Fresno. We have Reno. We have Medford in Southern Oregon. And a lot of those tracks, they're all great tracks, but they don't get a lot of draw from our Sacramento Valley. And Donald has a number of those tracks on his schedule, and he's trying to work out the schedule with everybody. As you know, it's almost an impossible task, but he's trying to keep it off the big dates and off the big series. But I'm really excited about that because I think NorCal can support a real regional series that travels to these outskirt tracks. And they're great venues. I mean, all those tracks I mentioned are a lot of fun to drive.
Interesting. Yeah, because I mean, I've familiar with a handful of the ones that you mentioned. I always forget how many classic tracks that you guys have in that area, especially some that have been around for so long, right? I mean, coming from someone that grew up in a track or in a state with just one track for a long time and now has 2. And other pockets of the country, right? To think that you've just listed off nearly 5-6 tracks all within a fairly decent range, and then for clubs at each one as well. So that makes sense. And that clears up a little bit for me of a guy that kind of looks at the some of the West as a bit of a cloud beyond when we look at SCUSA Pro Tour, Challenge, and then Pro Kart, right? What's there beneath all of that, and then what supports it all, and what could, bring numbers back to where they were maybe 15 years ago, and the West Coast seemed to have just as much, if not more, racing going on as the East. And it's not that it doesn't have any as much races, but from a racer total, I feel like it's a little bit less.
Yeah, and SCUSA, they pushed really hard. Sorry about that. SCUSA pushed really hard for like the NorCal series for Pro Kart Challenge. And the first couple of years, again, I'm going to use the word gimmick. It had a lot of support, and a lot of drivers from Central California, Southern Oregon, NorCal supported that series. But as it went on, it's like, oh, we'll do it next year, or we'll do the next race. And then the numbers fell off. And then with Tom driving from SoCal, that's a big expense. So for him to crack that nut to make it work sense, and Sonoma is ridiculously expensive to rent to put events on at Sonoma, he finally just had to kind of cut the cord and go, hey, I'm not getting the support, and I can't keep losing money to do this. But I think it's going to be pretty exciting to see. 2023, here on the West Coast is shaping up to look really good.
Sounds good. I had a question come in here for SSKC News down in Florida. Nothing yet on the 2024 or 2023 dates over there. From the looks of things, you can bet pretty easily that the Homestead date will stay part of the kind of unofficial national traveling circus that goes around the country. heads down to Homestead sometime after Thanksgiving. So that December date tentatively is going to stay exactly the same as it is. That's the same date as this weekend. So for those of you that are headed down to Florida to that race, I'll be over there helping out with the Sunshine State Karting Challenge again, not in any kart chaser duty, but that series I feel a little near and dear to because I was there from when Eric Jones first launched it back in 2018. As for the other 2 dates on the schedule, or 3 where they'll fall normally are one of the last dominoes to fall beyond the Homestead, the North Carolina Club Series, and then all the major national series. That at least now all the dates are set. The Miami Grands date only came out about a month ago, so I would bet the 2023 full season dates will probably come out a little bit after this weekend, but it's not something that I have my ear to the ground on so much anymore as we stay a little bit further away to not obviously leak anything, but also we've got enough going on and they do as well. So where the rest of the SSKC, that Florida State season goes next year, hard to say. The CKNA thing was the last thing that came up, and wanted to touch on that just a little bit here. Sorry. 2 things, actually, I forgot. I'm glad that I had my visual aids up. Aaron, you can go ahead, pull it up when we talk about state regional series. The Buckeye Karting Challenge is coming back in a little bit of a different form in 2023. They've got their date set. You talk about missing major national races. June over to Thompson Kart Raceway right after the SCUSA Spring Nats over at K1 Circuit, Ohio Motorsports Park, just a stone's throw away from USPKS's stop at the Motorsports Country Club of Cincinnati, I think, is at the end of August, if not Newcastle. I'm trying to remember which one of those 2 dates, but there's a national date right in the Midwest the week after. And then the Motorsports Country Club of Cincinnati, October 20th to 22nd, kind of a standalone event that doesn't really buck up to much of anything. But the Ohio State Series, as their dates out, some more regionals will come. And I wanted to make sure that we gave all those guys lots of shout outs at the beginning. And the CKNA class changes were the last thing that we had to touch on a little bit, which was the main takeaway from there is they've split out the cadet class into kind of a mini micro format, similar to what we've seen with Swift, with Rock, with Rotax over the last probably 10 years. It makes a lot of sense on paper with the numbers that they pull at the Grands. The only pushback is obviously splitting that class up. When you look at the local level, the way they've split the Masters and the Heavies and the Legends, it does get a little bit smaller. But, Jason, you can attest to this. Normally, people don't show up if they don't feel like they've got a fighting shot at the trophy. So, over time, those micro and mini classes fill up a whole lot more. Once you cut them in half, more guys come out of the woodwork. And the same when you make a Super Masters or when your X30 Masters class is decent and then you add KA Masters to Super Nats, you end up getting 40 and 40. So I think that
or
makes
overweight
a lot of
20-year-olds
or overweight 20-year-olds. Either way,
yeah.
When you split those classes up, it makes sense. They're slowing them down a little bit. The issue they always run into, and clubs and everyone everywhere, because not everyone's on the exact same throttle slide with the 206 class, is you're trying to take a very slow engine to begin with at only 9 horsepower for senior at 365, 370, or 390 pounds minimum weight. And at 150 pounds less weight, slow it down enough that the kids still have to use the brake pedal, but don't go faster than the juniors or the seniors, which was another part of the change that they did. They adjusted the throttle slides to slow the kids down a little bit more. Because with one of them, I can't remember which color, but one of the slides, I think the one that's used still at the GoPro Club and a handful of other clubs around, they're as fast as a Micro Swift, if not a little bit quicker. In 206 cadet. And then the speeds start to change once they get into 100cc and 125 on the 2-stroke side. But it makes a lot of sense because they've also done it where kids, it's not the same exact age split. It's going to be like 7, I think, or 8 to 11 on the micro side, and then it'll be 10 to 13 with the option to run a full-size go-kart. So with still the original 265-pound weight limit, and then I think it's 225 on the micro class. So from everyone, sounds like it makes sense. And when you split classes up, what we've seen normally is that they get light for about a year. And then if the class is good enough of a power plant and there's a little bit of momentum, by the next year, you're filled up back to 20 and 20 again, normally, at least in my experience. And I feel like it's probably the same out where you guys are at too.
Yeah. And I agree with you when you say, people show up for a trophy. Not to say they're always getting handed out, but there is something, there is a mentality about that where it's like, oh, if I don't have a chance. And I don't want to go too far off topic, but that, to me, that's when I got into karting, you started at club level and you weren't encouraged to move along from the club level until you were winning at the club level. And I think with a lot of these competitive local series that they're hyper competitive, but they're pulling away from a true club level. And so, drivers aren't really getting that chance to get their the rust knocked off or learn how to the racecraft and all this other stuff, because they're jumping right into this hyper competitive level right off the bat. It'd be like you or me, being 6 years old, going to high school to play baseball. It's like, okay, go hit a 90-mile-an-hour fastball. Go ahead, go.
Yeah.
So
And
just a little rant, but
I get it. I mean, I used to be on it too, even for like Kid Kart, for example, at, on the East Coast side, you had the WK Man Cup series back when it was a little bit more relevant, would still have, Kid Kart as an option. Right. And we think as purists of the sport, absolutely top level national races. Not only are they more expensive on the travel alone and the longer days and everything, that should be reserved for, when you get way into the sport, not in your first or second season. But when I started looking at where a lot of these guys were coming from, they had 1 to 2 Kid Kart entries at their home track or home region to begin with. It was the only place they could find the entries. So the unfortunate part is that it's a snowball effect, that if everybody else around you is going to the national series and not staying home, and not enough of them are doing legwork at home to get more guys racing at home, there's nowhere to go, and for some clubs, 206 cadet is still a 3 to 5 entry class. And any cadet class could be 3 to 5 entries. So, if you take your budget of running 10 club races and a good amount of test weekends to 3 or 4 regional or 3 or 4, national, it's not far off if you're doing everything yourself. And so in that case, again, I think it makes sense, to have the micro stuff. And the same argument for like, masters racing at a lot of national events. It's cool to see, guys come back, big names that were in senior from 5 or 10 years ago and compete. And, I'm sure it's a whole lot of fun for them to not have to be at the same level. It's still very competitive at super high level events like Super Nats and a handful of nationals where it gets to a 20, 30 cart field. But you're like, why is that guy here? But then you go back at his home track and, he's only got a handful of just senior 125 or 100cc entries as well. So it's a different topic for sure of the entire shift of the sport. But I think for where the CKNA stuff is, it makes a lot of sense for them. And at every major, they had this last year, their winter Nats coming up in a couple weeks in Jacksonville, their spring Nats, especially in Charlotte, and then their nationals at Newcastle. I mean, you had LCQs in the sportsman ranks. And if you got people showing up there for their first season and going home crying for 40th, you might be able to get that kid a little more racing time in the micro ranks. And it makes sense. It's a semi-pro class, semi-pro type series, semi-pro type event. It's not overly high intense. It's not crazy money. It's not crazy competition. It's good, but I think it's a good balance for them. So it makes sense.
And on the flip side, if you're a promoter and you're trying to fill the classes and people are coming to you and say, hey, we'll bring you 10, 15, 20 entries. This is what we want. As a promoter, you have to offer it. It's like, okay, well, they're not getting what they need wherever else. Yeah, we'll offer it, and they keep coming back. So
yeah, exactly. Well, Jason, as always, good to have you here, buddy, and we appreciate you as our unofficial West Coast correspondent for some of the updates over there. It's of course shameless plug for you on NorCal Karters. Go ahead, Mike is all yours. Whatever you'd like to plug is everything else you got going on. Although you hit a lot of it, you'll be at the Rock Sonoma doing all the live streams as well next year.
Yeah, I'll make it quick so you can get with your other guests. But NorCalKarters.com, that's the main website. On Mondays, we do a show, Ashley and I, called NorCal Mondays. We do our little live stream. It's really focused on karting in Northern California and the California region. But we also do special topics. We had chassis tuning with CRG, Tony Kart, Burrell. This year, we're going to expand into other chassis. So that's what we do. NorCal Karters, the whole idea is to promote karting as a whole. We don't promote races. We just promote all the races that are going on. And that's it. So, Xander, thank you very much. And I can't wait to listen to the rest of it. Listen to your other guests.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming on, Jason. Thanks again, buddy.
Thank you.
So, yeah, that's it, guys. We'll take one commercial break here. When we come back after the break, Alessandro Tullio, Alex Stanfield, and Caleb Gaffera are in the green room. They'll be joining us in the studio. And I wanted to do something a little different with the way our driver interviews will go tonight. Obviously, we'll talk to those guys about, how their seasons went in 2022 and their seasons in 2023. But we don't talk about driving style and like the little bits of the different ways to kind of skin the onion that everybody has. And I've got a couple clips I was able to pull, not as many as I would have liked to, but I wanted to ask them if there, how much of it was natural, how much of it was purposeful, and so on and so forth. And again, not style of calm or calculated or strategy. Everyone's very similar in that front. But if you watch the race and you watch these guys on boards, there's a few things you might be able to pick out that I feel like I've picked out, and they might even add on as well, that differentiates them a little bit, and it's something they've been able to make work. And I think that stuff is actually really cool. So we'll have a few more guys coming onto that to show their personality and a little bit about them throughout happy hour here during this December stint. Anyway, with all that said, they'll come right after the break, so stick with us. Commercial break, and we come right back. Kart Store USA is a kart parts supplier that racers and retailers can count on when they need reliable advice and service. We focus on servicing all racers with honesty and pride while maintaining customer satisfaction. We carry a full stock of Kart Republic and Tony Kart chassis, as well as IAMI and Vortex Rock engines. We've also got a host of other parts available and in stock, such as products from Rev Performance Materials, Jecco Racing Seats, and more. We have a 100% satisfaction guarantee. And on top of that, if your order exceeds $200, shipping is on us. Check out all we have to offer today by visiting us online at kartstore-usa.com. At New Gen Motorsport, we're committed to using our 10-plus years of experience and knowledge to help grow the sport of karting from the bottom up. Our goal is to make karting more accessible to the average person, lessening the financial burden of getting started, and making the learning curve as small as possible. Our passion is training and developing drivers, mechanics, and engineers to not only be the best they can be in karting, but also for careers in the much larger world of professional motorsports. A strong foundation makes building bigger easier. Let us be that foundation for your karting and motorsports career. Be part of the new generation of motorsport. Contact us today to schedule your test day, arrive and drive race event, or to inquire about how we can help get you started in your own new gen racing kart. Don't settle for a national engine builder. Take care of yourself with an international one. SRP Engines is a global industry leader in engine services, specializing in engine formulas such as KZ, OK, OKJ, and Mini 60. SRP Engines is the engine of choice for Magic Kart USA and helped power North America's #1 ranked pro shifter driver AJ Myers to the 2021 SuperKarts USA Pro Tour National Championship. SRP Engines can also service any spec engine class of your choice, including IAMI and ROC divisions. However, if you're looking for the absolute choice when it comes to KZ shifter engines, there is nobody better. For more information, contact Amar Sanada at srp-engines.com. KC Happy Hour is proudly presented by the Rock Sonoma Karting Championship, presented by Cameron Race Promotions, the most competitive Northern California karting series. Featuring a 2-day format with practice on Saturday and racing on Sunday, multiple track configurations, and a massive prize structure including tickets to Rock Vegas, race car test opportunities, and race rewards. Rock Sonoma is the training ground of multiple national karting champions each year and race car champions as well. Featuring a full Rock Cup USA class structure with each race weekend streamed live via YouTube, it's a series you cannot miss. For more info, check us out online at zanzarukarting.com. All right, everyone, welcome back here to KC Happy Hour. So introducing the studio for the first time, 2022 U.S. Pro Kart Series KA champion Alex Stanfield. Thanks for joining me here, Chuck.
Thank you.
We bring on in Alessandro Tullio back after the first time in probably almost 8 months, I think. We had you way back on the show back in the Winter Series.
Yeah, it's been a while. What's up, guys?
Yeah, man. And joining us for his first time, probably the #1 draft of the 2023 rookie class, Caleb Gaffera. Caleb, good to have you too as well, buddy.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Alex, let's start with you here as we kind of break down. Let's go back through 2022 seasons for everybody a little bit. In your case, it was kind of a return back to, the lights class per se with KA Senior in your second season. What was some of the driving motivators behind that? I know in Orlando it started off with just trying to find a good power plant, and then you stuck with it through that championship and the rest of the year. Walk me through that process of where you ended up.
Yeah, we got to Orlando just because we hadn't raced karts since Vegas, and honestly, we didn't expect to do the full year. We just wanted to do Orlando and maybe NOLA, and we did pretty good at Orlando getting the win. So we decided just to continue the championship and just see where that went.
And then rank yourself through the year, right? You go back through some of those big moments on the season. What would you rank yourself out of 10? How could you describe, the way the second year in the headline ranks went for you?
I mean, like out of 10, probably a solid 8.5 to 9. I feel like it was a really good year. Just it was all strategy, really, just from the beginning to the end. Just never give up. Even halfway through the year, I felt like it was a little bit of a slump, and then just kept pushing and just never gave up.
And then Ale, over to you, right? A partial schedule for last year. I'd imagine that's kind of similar of what you're looking at for 2023 too.
Yeah, I mean that's the goal for next year to continue in cars. So yeah, I'm pretty sure it's going to be a partial schedule for me as well next year.
And then this year, does that mean coming into Winter Series, there's any extra little chip on your shoulder to kind of get a title there with how quick you were back in 2022? I mean, you were really, really fast out of the gate. I know Vegas wasn't perfect, but it was still decent for you. Walk me through last year and then where you're feeling at.
Yeah, Winter Series was good last year. We had really good speed. The first weekend we won both races, but got a DQ in one. That was a bit unfortunate. And then the second weekend, the pace wasn't as strong as the first weekend, but yeah, I mean it was still good. We had a P4 finish and I think P7, so it wasn't terrible, but definitely we want to replicate that first weekend in both weekends this coming year.
Yeah, for sure. And Caleb, I felt like through the second half of the year, you struck me as more of a senior driver than anything, simply because how polished your media got from interviewing you probably 50, 60 something times for pole awards, heat wins, and then, of course, an unprecedented number of main event wins. Is there, outside of Supernats, where you had the one thing I didn't know, and I heard you bent the axle on the opening lap of the main, right, at X30 at Supernats?
We started off the race, and I mean, we were pretty low on air pressure, and it was just sliding. And I mean, we were spinning the tires for the first 3 laps, and then as my teammate passed me, I was trying to catch him. I overjumped the curb, probably with like 6 laps to go, and bent the axle. So I started losing a lot of time then.
Ah, okay. Yeah, because with Ernesto, he had a great run. He was quick. You were quick. Then through the year, I mean, is there anything you felt like you left on the table this year? Because it seemed like you left, got a whole lot out of each weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really think I could have left. I don't think really much. I mean, it was such a great year. It was by far my best year in karting ever. So I was pretty happy about that.
Now let's go over. Let's talk styles a little bit here, Alex. I wanted to talk to you. I wish I had your onboard. For some reason, I couldn't get that one downloaded from one of your videos. I have Ale's coming up here a little bit, and Caleb's been a little more secretive with his GoPro over recently, but. But Alex, for you, man, when I look at some of your onboard footage, especially even this year in K100, right, you're locking up the brakes more than a lot of guys around you, and more than anything, you're able to hit the curbs a lot more in places when guys aren't hitting them. For Newcastle, for example, going back on some of your pull videos, some of the guys can go back. You're hitting, like, if we count the finish line being at the end of the long straightaway. Turn 2, the left-hander, you're able to hit the curb going the normal direction. Going backwards, you're hitting turn number 3 a whole lot. And then even in some of the flat-out parts, and it seems like, you stiffen your body a whole lot more than you need to, right? Because we see everybody else go through there and they don't hit it. So how much of that was by design? How much is it just fun for you to hit curbs and your posture, your style, right? As a guy, like I said, to me, the biggest thing that stuck out, you lock up a lot more than guys do, and you kind of just nudge over curbs more than most.
Yeah, I mean, with the brakes, I just try to turn the cart with the brakes, just locking it up, and then it helps with the front tires, not using them as much. It honestly just saves the fronts a little bit more when locking them up, and it just turns the cart. And then with the curbs, I just try to shorten the track as much as possible. Just trying to get almost on the grass, and it's honestly more fun that way too. But like Newcastle, like with the high speed stuff, I can just go flat over the curbs rather than just lifting and going around them. So I just found that was always faster. And then it was kind of just transitioned to like more of a driving style after, I'd say, like 2021. Really, just I kept doing that everywhere, which it's pretty fast, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, like, you look at the graduates that have come out of the GWR camp, the team with Gary Willis and everything, like, there's a lot of different distinct postures and styles. You look at Austin Garrison, and he's a lot more up on the wheel than most guys. You look at Ryan, and Ryan has probably the most roll speed and is one of the last ones onto the throttle in most corners. So how much was that just you on your own, and how much was that kind of Gary coaching you along the way? Or is he more just telling you to get on your apexes?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of developed that a little bit with Crosslink, and then when I went to Gary, he just kind of helped me get on the lines and everything, and just get kind of just more of a just braking zones and where to brake, and get on the gas and everything. But I kind of just said I got to put my own little bit into it and lean a little bit on the curbs and just try to get everything out of it that I could, like just 110% every corner.
And so if you were to describe that, right, to some of the kids and other drivers watching of, like, what goes through that makes you able to do that in a lot of high-speed sections where it doesn't upset the go-kart, can you walk us through that a little bit, and then they can go to your YouTube channel and see that in action?
Yeah, with the high-speed stuff especially, it's all in the upper body. So I try to lean into the corner a little bit, and then as the apex starts, I go a little bit more out, and it helps plant the right rear tire a little bit while I go over the curbs, and it just gives me more traction too. As soon as I get off the ground, it's immediate on throttle. So the body as well. When I had broke my ribs a few years ago too, so I just had to lean out of the seat a little bit, and then it just kind of transitioned into a driving style. So I just used that and helped me just get over the curbs. So.
And was there like a moment, right? You say back when you broke your ribs and you were naturally leaning out more, like you hit one and you're like, oh, like that wasn't as bad as like, the guys around me. And then you realize like that by putting the weight off there, the front is almost lighter when it first hits the curb with it being pushed, towards the rear axle. Was there like a light bulb moment for you?
Yeah, exactly. I think it was Homestead where I broke my ribs a few years ago, because I actually hit a wall. It wasn't even the curbs that broke it, but I broke two of them on my left side, and then it kind of just was like an eye opener. I hit one curb. I think it was at Newcastle that year, and I hit a curb, and I was like, that didn't even hurt. So I'm just gonna keep doing it, and it was faster, and no one was doing it. So I just gained like 2/10 on that curb, and I just kept doing it every track, and it helped, and I just always find time on the curbs.
Interesting. I like how you're able to break that down. Now, Ale, for you here, when we talk at style, what I had taken your onboard here from Orlando. So I want to play this a little bit and then kind of point out a few things of it. To me, the biggest thing was noticing how much, the braking I thought was similar, Marks, to maybe Norberg's line around there and Marian's too a little bit, but your hands switch a little bit through the lap if you guys want to take a look right here. So like you watch, anytime you're going to whatever outside corner, you're this case being a left-hander, right, you adjust your right hand. Your left stays pretty stagnant, right? Then you go through, hit the curbs here, your right, watch your right wrist, right? Like you're pushing on the wheel pretty hard here. And then when you set back up for like a left-hander, you readjust your hand just like that. So how much of that has been natural? How much of that was like, just because of a strength or anything? Is there any stuff that you noticed like that specifically on you of how you get around, especially because you're on a go-kart that nobody else normally is on in the last 3 years of your karting career?
I honestly didn't even know. I never noticed that. Like
really,
I noticed like in the video you just played, the hand like changes a bit. I guess it's just pushing. I guess it would be like pushing. So if it's a left-hand corner, I would be pushing like this, and then once I get to the straight or to the left to a right-hand corner, I would push with the left. So yeah, I guess it's like a strength thing.
yeah.
I never even noticed that, to be honest.
And for yourself too, I mean, all right, well, let's take it off the hands here. Maybe anything else that you would notice, because let's go to brake lockup, right? You're also a guy that seems to be able to go pretty deep on the brakes, and your brakes are a little bit different. Have you driven a lot of other go-karts besides the Paralin, or was there anything specific of how you work on, something? Is there anything you feel like you do a whole lot different than other guys or better?
The Paralin brakes are honestly really good. So I use that to my advantage. I like to brake deep, but also you need to be careful because the MG yellow also overheats and it wears off quicker. So braking deeper and attacking more on entry will also wear out the tire. But yeah, I like braking. I like braking pretty deep. I guess it's just natural for me. And I don't know if you guys seen my onboard in Vegas when I won junior. All I was using was my brakes.
Yeah, I mean that was around the outside pass on nearly the entire
Yeah.
field, right? So, but in this case, like you're able to, on that go-kart, it locks up. It doesn't ever look like it really steps out on you. Is that just how good you're able to hold on to the wheel to keep it at a margin? Because like if you look at here, it's hard to tell if your foot like modulates a lot. Normally, you tell guys when they lock the brake up, a certain amount of pressure at the beginning, and then as your speed slows down, you kind of let off a little bit. Not when you fully get off right there, but your foot looks like it's pretty locked on. So with the way that you set your brakes up, are you even moving any bit with your toe or a little bit on your ankle to try and go less as it slows down? Or are they so like stable under braking that you can keep it locked pretty hard and not really kick it out sideways?
The brakes lock pretty easily, but they also it's stable, so you can lock up, but it won't step out or anything unless you like really give it a hard kick. If you just do it normally, like it will lock up. It's pretty easy to lock up, but it's also stable, so it won't step out or anything like that.
So you kind of go just to like the lockout point, not like a lead foot down on the brakes, but enough where it locks and it can sit there and not get too gnarly for you?
Yeah, exactly. I just give it enough to where it locks up a bit just to get that rotation. And then once it rotates, you let off the brake and just roll, or whatever type of corner it is. It depends. You either roll or you just get back on gas.
Gotcha. Now, Caleb, over to you. Since I don't have as much onboard to work with, but to be honest, if I think back on a lot of your year, there's not like a lot with your style that sticks out as much more. And I think some of that's going to get shown more in the heavier go-karts like in senior, because the big note that we hear from, and Alex and Ali, you can echo this a little bit, right? With a heavier go-kart, the tires can heat up more over the course of the session, where the junior classes being lighter get away with a little more mistakes and less conservation. But for Caleb, do you look at, Ryan's on boards at all when you're on a lot of those weekends and see if you notice anything different? Normally a lot of those, I wouldn't say he's the one coaching you, right? You normally have a different guy that leads the juniors.
Yeah, I mean, I do talk to him sometimes. I'm like, hey, Ryan, can I watch your video? Just like see what I could go faster on, like, and make more time. I always look at, okay, yeah, he can roll more speed there, but grip your tire. But I mean, for me, it's like at the beginning of the year, it was really bad. My hands in the OTK, it was so bad. I was like cranking the wheel way too much, and more as the year went on, like I started to just calm down, and as I started to calm down more, I got so much quicker.
And so is that just slowing the hands down, or were you driving it all a little more with your feet?
It's just a lot of slowing the hands down, but yeah, it's a little bit with the feet, not terribly much. I mean, I always like going in deep as well. Like I always like sending in as far back as I possibly can. But I mean, I like the OTK brakes. OTK brakes are pretty nice. I like those.
Alex, over to you for 2023. Where does every kind of racing, not just karting, see yourself out at this point of planning for the year?
Yeah, I think we're trying to do a full season of Spec Miata with BSI Racing, and that'll be pretty fun. And then karting-wise, I think we're just doing the Stars Championship for the OKN. And then I think the first race for that is May at GoPro for the night race. So that'll be pretty fun. And I'll be with GWR for that. So I'll be on the Gillard for that. So that'll be cool.
Have you done any direct drive testing at all before on any of those old retro engines or anything like that?
Not yet, but hopefully soon, because it seems like no one can get an OKN right now. So hopefully I can get on an older engine right now and just kind of test around. But it seems really exciting. So I'm excited.
Ollie, I know you're just coming hot off a test not too long ago. As you're looking, are you trying mainly to push to see if you can get a USF 2000 budget together?
I'm not sure. We just we arranged the India Pro test, or USF Pro 2000 test, it's called now, like the night before the day I was gonna test. So that was pretty last minute, but I'm not sure what I'm gonna do next year. But yeah, it's something. Hopefully, something within the USF Pro championship.
And how much have you been able to kind of block out of that with your head of going into the year and at the track, knowing that you've got to kind of put on a bit of a sponsor face or a networking deal and still like not letting it mess you up when you're behind the wheel or during the day? Because that's an aspect that doesn't get talked about a whole lot when you get into car racing, because you're so much spending a lot of head effort on fundraising, right? That you're able to, have that side completely checked off once you turn the engine on. Has that been something that's weighed on you at all throughout the year and then going into next year with a lot of unknowns?
Yeah, I mean, I'm yeah, as a driver for Paralin, I in the US I need to, I'm showing the brand, so I do need to get the results and, pretty much sell chassis, especially the big one, the X30 one. So yeah, it does weigh, but I mean at the same time when you're driving, whatever you drive, you want to win and you want to bring it home, so it doesn't really affect me.
I mean more on like the formula car stuff, right? Because
Oh,
that's the more. I'm not talking about the karting stuff because that's
okay,
easier,
okay.
right? You get the go kart and you just need to go out and perform, and there's a little bit of like coaching younger drivers and stuff like that. But going through that world this year, and then now kind of being in, I wouldn't say negotiations, right? But trying to see if you can get the right discount from the right team in a good environment, feeling that out, and then also talking to everyone that supported you to fundraise what you need. How stressful is that going through that for the first year and a half now?
Um, I mean, as we all know, it takes a big budget to race, especially in open wheel. So, I mean, it does. Like, I'm always thinking about it, and especially when I'm at the track, like even in karting, I'm thinking about my future in cars. I'm always talking to people and networking with people. So yeah, I mean, it's just finding the budget is tough, but as long as you do the right thing and uh also, I tested with Jay Howard, so getting to meet new people and new environments. I mean, it's good just to go with the right people.
And then your 2023 plans on the karting side, like you said, we think partial schedule. So what does that look like? That's kind of around it'll probably be around your road to Indy season to stay out of injury, right? So that you would think maybe the Vegas stuff the end of the year and winter at the beginning.
Yeah, I think so. I think winter is almost confirmed. All the winter stuff, and then probably at the end of the year, yeah, Vegas or maybe the last Pro Tour race. I don't know. It depends. Last year a lot of the car stuff interfered with the karting stuff, so that's why I didn't do much karting this year. But we'll see how the schedule plans out for next year.
Well, we'll see on that for you. And then for Caleb, you're going in with, I think, a little bit of a different kind of dynamic than, let's say, Alex and Ale did into senior the first time. It's not, I don't feel like as big of a rookie class going across the board. But there has been a long time since there's been like a big graduation of RPG juniors to go up and run against Ryan and senior. So where's your head at with all that stuff? I mean, you got to be feeling pretty cocky of how good you did this year. Right, but are you reset for next year? Where are you at?
Yeah, I mean, for next year, I think we should be okay. I mean, I don't think we'll be terrible. I think we'll have speed. But most of I mean, it'll be good to race with Ryan, get data, and just see what it's like racing with him and all other guys out there in senior because they've been racing for way longer than I have, most of them. So we'll just see how that goes.
And then push me in qualifying.
Right, help him out a little bit. Yeah, he's gonna need something. Alex, you first, and then Ale. If you look back on any mistakes that you made in your very first year, especially first couple stints in senior, any advice for Caleb going into the year?
Just try to get Ryan to push you. That's the best thing to do. I mean, he's got a lot of horsepower. Just try to get him to push you. That's the best thing to do. I mean, but in all seriousness, I mean, just don't make stupid moves like a junior would usually. Don't be too aggressive. Just work your way up. Just not a lot of the seniors like a new cocky junior that's gonna try to make dive bombs and run people off the track and stuff.
Yeah.
So just try to be smart. That's all I can say.
Ale, keep going, Alex.
Yeah, and also I wish that I was more aggressive my first senior stint. I think I got out of the gate pretty good in Homestead in the Rock Florida Winter Tour, but then as like Utah and NOLA, I was just not as aggressive as I should have been. But I think overall it was a good first stint for me.
Yeah. Ale, your junior year, your first senior year, first foray, stuff you learned from?
I think the biggest thing is, I mean, I know Caleb we'll have the speed. I just think the biggest thing is the racecraft. Know when to make a move. Know when to save the tire because the MG, the yellow tire is it's softer, so it wears out quicker, it overheats quicker. So you have to kind of manage that too, especially with the long races. But I know his speed will be there. I think it's just about making the right choices and just mainly racecraft.
And for both of you guys, was there any point throughout the whether it was your first year or your second year in senior where you kind of felt like you went from hoping that the other guys would respect you and not just shuffle you out of the pack to knowing that you wouldn't and feeling like you belong? Was there any race where you felt like, it wasn't like it's called imposter syndrome a little bit, right? Where you do deserve to be there, but you don't think you do. Or maybe that you felt like they accepted you. If you think back on that year, is any parts of your year or any races where you went from feeling like kind of a fish out of water to being like you deserve to be up there?
For me, it was probably honestly the Florida Winter Tour last year. It was like the second round at Ocala. I felt like I actually belonged up at the front in senior because I had good runs at the beginning of the year, but I just still wasn't that confident with the racing. But I think that race, the second round, when I was in second, or I think I led a little bit of the race, it felt pretty good. And I felt like I actually had a chance to win that race and even just had a decent run and just felt like I belonged there.
And then, Ale, for you, you jumped up at the end of 2020 to the regional level and were quick. And then you go into SCUSA Winter Series. When you pulled it at SCUSA Winter Series in the very beginning, did you feel like you belonged then? Or did you feel like you had a lot more of a chip on your shoulder and trying to earn it?
I mean, it's tough to say. My first, apart from SSKC Winter Series was, I mean, it was good at the beginning. We had the speed. I think we qualified pole, won the pre-final, and then I was expecting I was gonna get shuffled back in the final. Maybe not as hard as I did, but I was expecting them to race me hard, especially me being a junior. My first national race in senior, I knew I was gonna get shuffled back, and they were gonna play with my head. So I think that's also a big piece of advice for Caleb is just they're gonna try to play with you, and they're gonna race you hard, especially the first couple of races. Especially if you're up there right away, they're gonna be aggressive.
When did you?
We are gonna be aggressive.
Yeah. You guys are gonna jump. When did it click then for you? Right, Alex says it was the second Florida Winter Tour, which would have been his third or fourth race of really being up there. When did you feel like you belonged up in there, and what was the moment?
After Winter Series, I took a break. I didn't do rock. Obviously, I couldn't do all the SCUSA stuff. So USPKS is when it kind of clicked in. I think Ocala was the first race. I had the speed, and since I already knew like how they were gonna race me, I kind of knew already. So I raced a bit differently with a different mindset, and I think it kind of started to click. It started to click there.
Sweet. Well, Caleb, I'm sure a lot of that's advice that you already got told. Part of that's obviously for the viewers coming in and to hear back from them. But, final thoughts for yourself going into next year, where you think you should be and where your head's at. Like I said, you said you feel like you should be pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think we can definitely be top 15, top 10. I don't think that'll be a problem, but it'll just be like staying consistent because in Europe, I had driven on the soft tire, the Vega Greens. That was really soft. And I mean, you couldn't go, I mean, in quali, you could only do 2 laps and the tires were gone. So, I mean, it's just all about saving tires. Like, as long as I just drive smooth, I think I'll be all right.
Sweet. Well, we appreciate having you boys on here and getting to expose you a little bit more. We'll see you two over in January, hopefully. Alex, we'll see you later on in the season, it seems like. But thank you guys for coming on. Alex, Ale, Caleb, appreciate you guys here.
Yeah, thank you for bringing us on.
Thank you for having. Yeah,
thank you, boys.
You.
All right.
See you guys.
With that, we will wrap up our show here for tonight. So once again, thank you guys all for tuning in so far. We'll have a lot more of those major drivers coming on, and the rookie class for 2023 continue to be announced. Kicked off with Caleb and more over the next few weeks. Next week's show, I wanted to give a little teaser about that. I have Alexis Rule joining us, and Ryan Norberg will be coming back as well. I wanted to do a little bit different stuff through this offseason and play with it, try some different things. So part of it, obviously, tonight was giving those guys a little bit extra into the driving style. I thought that was cool, again, with Alex's bit, but especially next week, will be a lot about social media marketing. We've learned a whole lot in the last 2.5 years of everything that we've done so far. Obviously, Ryan's done a phenomenal job for himself, over 11,000 subscribers on YouTube and a massive following on Facebook and Instagram as well. Alexis has been working in the social media marketing space for quite a bit. You'll know her work through the Stars Championship Series, through the Race Factory USA pages on Instagram and Facebook, and a number of other accounts that she's managed successfully over the bit. So for any of you parents or for drivers watching along that would love to kind of learn a little bit of what's the secret to success and some things to learn, I want to peel back the books on us, show you guys a little bit of, some of the benefits of it. For example, Instagram is monetized actually pretty well now beyond just YouTube, which is a little bit lesser known. YouTube's going to be monetizing some vertical video with YouTube Shorts more in the spring of 2023. And just in general, when you look at sponsorship, if you're in the case like Ale or with Alex next year of trying to do more expensive forms of racing, and you need sponsorship money, you need to network, you need to get your name out there, you need to just expose who you are and put that, even if it's little deals, whether it's, chassis or engine mounts or parts or whatnot, all that helps if you have a following and can use it. So that'll be a main focus of next week's show and more coming on into the winter as the news continues to break. But thanks as always for tuning in, guys. We'll see you guys next week. Ready to go racing along the Gulf Coast? Karting the Coast is a family-oriented regional series that covers Mississippi and Louisiana. Its 2023 schedule consists of 10 races spread amongst finish line performance. Ready to go racing along the Gulf Coast? Karting the Coast is a family-oriented regional series that covers Mississippi and Louisiana. Its 2023 schedule consists of 10 races spread amongst finish line performance karting in Biloxi, Mississippi, and NOLA Motorsports Park in New Orleans. To find out more, visit coastalkarting.com. As the Western importer of the Praga and Formula K chassis brands, Leading Edge Motorsports is a high-performance kart shop and race team with a simple mission: teach others the joy of high-performance driving, supply our customers with the highest quality products and services, and most of all, win races. With our remarkable racing inventory, expert services, and top-ranked national-level team to back it up, we'll help to get your new kart racing package up and running fast. From arrive and drive service to kart preparation and driver coaching to the parts you need to get you back on the racetrack, Leading Edge Motorsports is the industry answer. From 4-stroke to 100cc to 125cc and beyond, TechnoKart USA has a winning option for you. Based out of Des Plaines, Illinois, TechnoKart USA offers both chassis designed to win in all divisions of North American karting and a top-level race support program at the U.S. Pro Kart Series, Route 66 Sprint Series, select Cup Karts North America races, and both the Rock Vegas and SCUSA Super Nationals. Podiums, wins, and championships are waiting for you whenever you're ready to get on a TechnoKart. For more information, follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/TechnoKartUSA.